Coming to you live from a dimension where McDonald's doesn't underestimate the hype behind the Szechuan sauce and produces more than a total of 500 packets for the thousands of people across the U.S. dying to try it. Meanwhile, this is Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
The magic's gone, Brandon. Like for the video listeners, they're like, "What? Why is Brandon such a good ventriloquist?"
I need to. You know what I need to do is I need to edit that track a little bit and make sure I do. I thought this app would do the fade out a little bit better, and it does do the fade out, but it doesn't do the fade out like I would normally do the fade out. And that's why machines will never be able to replace me.
Machines will never take over completely. We'll always have a role, Brandon. Welcome, everybody, to Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast. So happy that you decided to join us, even after the season's over. Both of you that are now listening, we're so pleased that you've continued to download this podcast.
That's absolutely right. Every single two of you. You make us keep going a thing that we're doing.
Yeah. If you are listening to this, the moment we have posted it up on the RSS feed, we apologize that the episode is somewhat delayed, but we spent last night trying to do a live stream. We accomplished that. We did do a live stream. I haphazardly built a knockoff Lego set, the McFarlane Toys Rick and Morty Garage. If you want to go over to the Apathetic Enthusiasm YouTube channel and watch me sort of stream of conscious through that, then by all means go and check that out. And then Brandon, that's semi-pertinent news, and we should talk about that in semi-pertinent news. We should talk about that more in semi-pertinent news, Travis. All right. So before we get to that, let's make sure that we list off all of the social media ways that you can get in touch with the show. Of course, as always, we have our Twitter account at Rick and Morty Pod. Head over to our subreddit, rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com. You can connect with us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. Send us those emails at rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com. You can buy t-shirts like the one I wore to McDonald's this weekend over on our TeePublic site by going to apatheticenthusiasm.com/shop. And as some of you have decided to do, and we are oh so grateful, head over to patreon.com/Rick and Morty Pod if you want to support the show in a more financial sort of way. Yeah, give us the monies.
Why that sounded so sneaky. Like
I don't know. There's all kinds of ways you could support the show.
Sneaky weasel.
I saw a post, I think it was on Facebook today, of ways that you can support creators that you love without having to actually pay money. A couple of those things were like retweeting and sharing their content, which many of you have been doing, and we're super grateful for that. Sure. And the other one is just adding comments and things like that. So,
by the way, I said sure, and that sounded so dismissive. And I just want to say it's not dismissive. I didn't mean it to come off that way. And please don't be mad at me. Like I appreciate each and every one of your likes and retweets.
Yes.
When I say sure, it's
sure.
Like it's a term of endearment. Term of endearment with Jack Nicholson.
Sure it is. All right, Brandon. Well, without any further delay, we have a whole lot of stuff to talk about, even without a new episode. So let's get right into that semi-pertinent news.
Slooby-doop, slooby-doop, slooby-dooby-doo. A semi-pertinent news, a slooby-dooby news.
Yeah, semi-perts, the most pertinent of semi-pertinent news.
Oh, before we get into semi-pertinent news,
we already did it. You did the song. We're here now. We can't go back.
Stupid semi-pertinent news. I want to say that we did the. We'll start. This kind of it's kind of semi-pertinent in the sense that you did a live stream last night, and I want to throw a shout out to those folks who were watching that because they got a first taste and they got to vote on which intro we used today. Right. Which was they voted for the McDonald's intro, but I want to they got to vote and they got to decide, but I want you all to hear I want Unity. I want the rest of you to hear the second intro I did. And since I have it on this weird little soundboard now, I can do that. So this is the second intro, Travis, and you can talk through it. And that's
Okay.
a great thing about soundboards.
Provide commentary.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So I like to give about 18 to 20 seconds. Here goes. Coming to you live from a dimension where season 3 isn't over yet. We're just getting ready to talk about one of 3 more episodes leading into the season finale. It's a good time to be alive and a great time to be here on Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast. And you can tell that my heart wasn't in that.
It wasn't there.
I didn't
didn't sell it, Brandon. You didn't sell it to me.
I didn't have passion, and that's what I put into my third one, which is, hey everybody, this is the Rick and Morty podcast. Check it out every day on Stitcher, live on that radio dial. Okay, I'm not gonna do soundboard anymore. We had this conversation about how I wanted you to limit your soundboard usage,
and you've fired it off like 3 times already, and we're not even through semi-pertinent news.
Yeah,
I've really started semi-pertinent news. If at any point, the biggest thing I want for you is if you ever completely run out of ideas for improvised songs, to just have like some of those at the ready, so you can just be like, and then you hit like the emergency like music button, and then you'll have intro music, just in case the worst should happen.
Yeah, I got you. And we're going on a break.
All right, back in 2 and 2 with Interdimensional RSS.
That was a good fade out.
Yeah, maybe we could become professional DJs at some point. Anyway, semi-pertinent news, guys. Realistically, we've been already wasting like 7 minutes, but there is a lot of Rick and Morty news going on right now. First and foremost, there was a rumor that there may be a secret episode coming. There was a couple of theories that season 3 actually wasn't over. Some fans were checking Adult Swim on Sunday night to see if episode 11 would air. Others are considering the possibility that thanks to the outro from Mr. Poopy Butthole at the end of the season finale, that maybe a Christmas episode could be coming up. Brandon, what are your thoughts, your feelings on the last threads of season 3?
A couple folks had said, "Oh, what if there was an episode last night?" And to first point, I'd be so upset. I'd be like, "Man, they trolled me." And why did they do that? They ruined Adult Swim's ratings for that night by doing that. And then the second one, which is like a Christmas episode, that'd be cool. Maybe it's like a return to see how Jurassic Anatomy Park is doing. Yeah,
we could have a real wholesome family Christmas.
Drum, Christmas drum. Oh, that's a song I need to put on there.
It's a human holiday. That's what we want to have. Yeah. So a human holiday special. It could happen. We actually didn't talk about it on the podcast, but last week, right after we got done recording, Brandon's fumbling through and not listening to me as he was web surfing was him trying to get that quote from Dan Harmon where he said that the season finale that we got wasn't originally intended to be a finale. They were trying to do like 14 episodes, but they weren't able to get them done in time.
They finalified it.
They finalified it, which, a lot of people have talked about how the finale didn't feel as strong as some of the other season finales or even some of the other episodes in season 3. We totally agree with that, and it makes a lot more sense now. So, yeah, the idea that, okay, they already had some stories maybe that they were working on, and maybe those will come up before season 4 starts. I'm not at this point with the way season 3 started and the surprise on April Fool's. I'm not ruling anything out, but I'm pretty confident that season 3's pretty much done. If we do get a special around Christmas time, yeah, I guess you could attribute that to season 3, but I would almost be more likely to say that that's like its own standalone special and not necessarily tied to a season.
Yeah, you're not ruling anything out, but you're not ruling anything in. And I think that's the distinction, Travis.
I'm in and I'm out. I'm out.
You're that movie with Kevin Kline.
Thanks. Yeah. Certified fresh.
we have this in a specific order, but I just want to throw this out there. Apathetic Enthusiasm. Just a shout out real quick. Apathetic Enthusiasm. If you haven't checked that show out, that's me and Travis doing the tangents that we do, but a whole show of it.
The whole show is tangents, and this next episode that will be out next week, we're going to be talking about Blade Runner 2049 because we both went and saw that movie.
Yeah,
freaking awesome.
And
then something that I think is near and dear to both you and myself. I know it was very important in my formative years, but the death of AOL Instant Messenger. Definitely think that will be a topic for discussion over on Apathetic Enthusiasm and a whole lot more. So
always remember, never forget.
Never forget. Okay, Brandon. The news that is sweeping the internets, the return of the Szechuan sauce, Saucegate, Szechuan Gate 2017. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I want to start first with the sauce event, and then I want to talk a little bit about the backlash from it. If you guys have been to apatheticenthusiasm.com, then maybe you have seen the blog post I threw together. I did get a chance to go to a McDonald's on Saturday. Brandon made it very clear to me that I didn't have a choice. There were no sauce packets available in Hawaii, and wouldn't you know it, 20 minutes away in Omaha, Nebraska, they did have a McDonald's store that had received 18, according to management, packets of Szechuan sauce. I showed up at what I thought was early at 11:30 a.m. and was already the 38th person to receive a ticket. And when I say a ticket, it was an index card with Sharpie written on it.
Well, now that index card, was it cut in half? Like
No, full index card.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Real deal.
Spare no expense.
Absolutely. And I thought about it when I received it. I was like, I have time between now and 2:00 to walk to a nearby, office supply store, buy myself a packet of generic index cards and a Sharpie, and I could have the first 5 sauce packets if I wanted to really get into this. Who's to say?
I think that's what some people did at like Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. I think people did, maybe not Sharpie, but to cut into line. One of my buddies was down there and he said that happened.
Just those counterfeit credentials. But yeah, so I knew very early on that I was not going to get a sauce packet for myself, which meant I was not going to have a sauce for you either, Brandon. And I felt like I let you down. I let my family down. I let the podcast down.
And you did.
Yeah, absolutely. But so I did.
It's a feeling is confirmed.
It's accurate. It's absolutely correct.
You're awful. I told you to show up 2 weeks early.
You did, even though it wasn't announced 2 weeks early. You told me.
I'm trying.
But yeah, so I stuck around a little bit, and we found some of the folks who did get those early numbers, and I asked them a few questions. I asked them about what they were going to do with the sauce. And I think we have some of that. Do you have some of that audio available?
I do. It's a soundboard. Of course I do.
All right.
I spent a whopping 5 minutes trying to get all the stuff on the soundboard.
So let's start with Tom. I think number 2.
Yeah.
The number 2 guy in line.
All right, here we go.
All right, so I'm here with Tom. He is number 2 for the Szechuan sauce giveaway. Tom, what is your plan for what you're going to do with the sauce?
I'm going to take pictures of it, post it on social media, and then I'm going to save it for my friend, and then we're going to just try it together.
All right. Have you been a fan of the show for a long time?
I have been. I've been watching since season 1.
Awesome. And what was your favorite part of season 3?
Season 3, I'd say the Evil Morty episode. It was a big plot twist, so.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Editor's note. You just fantastic man on the scene interview.
Man on the street. Well, thank you. I just whipped out my iPhone because I brought 0 recording equipment with me, and so kudos to the good folks in Cupertino for producing that quality hardware recording device.
Not sponsors.
Not a sponsor. Absolutely not a sponsor. Yeah. So Tom was pretty cool, and I'll talk a little bit more about Tom moving forward. He actually got there. I want to say it was like at 2 a.m, and the store like the staff didn't show up till 4 a.m. They actually had to ask him to leave the parking lot because they weren't allowed to have anyone on the premises until 5 when they actually opened their doors.
Yeah.
And so then he was there at 5, and there was another kid there. He let that kid go ahead of him so that the kid could get number 1, and then he took the number 2 spot. So really just a friendly guy and
small town heroes.
Yes, exactly. That's right. There were also some other folks that had a lot of sauce are coming their way. Some folks decided to team up and get in there. Oh, my phone is messing up now. They wanted to. This was
You're talking about Justin.
Justin, who brought his girlfriend with him, so he was not only number 16 but also number 17 in line for the Szechuan sauce.
All right, so Justin, you're number 16 for the Szechuan sauce?
Correct, yes.
And what time did you show up to get that number?
Oh, we got here around like 9 a.m., so we came a little bit later, but we were lucky enough to get the 16 and 17, which is, there was only 18 packets, so it's pretty close to the end.
That's cutting it pretty close, but good on you. What do you plan to do with the sauce? Are you gonna eat it? Or are you gonna save it? What's your plan?
So with one of them, we're gonna both try it because me and my girlfriend have never tried it before, so we're gonna try one of them, and the other one I'm gonna try to sell it. So we'll see how that works out.
I'll be outside afterwards. You just let me know how much you want to sell it for. But well, congratulations on the sauce.
I cut that off early, Travis, because I feel like we know the conclusion to that. And that you didn't actually buy it from him.
I didn't. No, I totally did not.
You're like one of those people who go on like the Facebook like community swap meet pages, and you're like, yeah, I'll get that collection of socks that you're selling.
Yeah, and just let me know where I gotta meet you, and then they never show up.
Yeah,
and you're just sitting there alone in a Walmart parking lot for like 2 hours. Yeah. Like, should I leave? Like maybe they're just running late.
Anyway. Yeah, no,
Justin was cool. He's also a fan of the same basketball team that I am, so I talked to Justin for a little while after that interview.
Thunder up, Kobe style.
OKC, it's our year. Anyway, so there were a lot of cool people. A lot of people reported online that the lines were kind of out of hand, that people were getting frustrated and things like that. That really was not the case at the Omaha store where I was. So I don't know. It's overall, even people that weren't getting the sauce, that got there late and knew that they weren't going to be able to get any, they were still just kind of excited to be there and see everything happen. And so I did wait in line. I did cash in my number 38, and I got a Szechuan sticker, which will live on longer than any Szechuan sauce. I don't know. It's pretty cool. I want to talk about Tom because after when he said that he was going to take pictures of it and then share it with his friends, he actually did that in the restaurant, and he had bought like a 20-piece of nuggets and he was dipping them. And one of those nuggets he actually dipped and then walked over to my table and handed it to me. So I actually got a chance to taste the sauce, even though I did not get out of bed early enough to get down there and get a number for myself. And yeah, it's a sauce. It's very soy sauce tasting. I'm going to be honest. If it was a regular menu item, it probably wouldn't have been my choice for dipping my nugs.
There you go. Right from the horse's mouth to your plate, to your ear plate.
So Brandon, what were your thoughts? Because you kind of watched it from behind the internet. What was your take on just sort of how McDonald's dealt with this promotion and the fact that they did run such a limited release for the Szechuan sauce?
Man, okay, things don't come out to Hawaii, and I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm not really fine with that, but I'm also, you just get used to it. You were here, I know how it is. I'm scratching my neck because I've got a mosquito bite there, but we have mosquitoes in Hawaii. that is one thing we do get. But so I wasn't too torn up that it wasn't coming out to Hawaii. Because I was like, oh, well, Travis is going to be in Omaha and they're there. He's going to be able to get sauce for me, and then we could try it for the show. And then everyone would be like, oh my God, their show is the best. Keep listening. But now they're not going to, because that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But so I was fine with it. And then I was playing Divinity Original Sin 2 with John, and you hit me up like, yeah, no, they only had 20, or they only have 18 now, because you told me they had 20 before.
Yeah, I heard a couple of different numbers there,
Yeah.
and I'm almost positive a McDonald's employee walked away with 2 packets of sauce.
Right. And you call like, well, what do I do now? Should I? And we both decided like, well, you're there. Try to get a story out of it as far as interviews go, and you wrote a blog on it. And the thing is, with I thought at the time like, oh, okay, they only gave out 20 packets to Omaha. That's the Omaha one. Like, they're like, we don't care about Nebraska. Well, they have their corn. You can't make sauce out of corn. But then as it kept going, and then I started hearing more and more about it on Twitter, people getting pissed off on Twitter. Like, oh no, all the stores were getting that few, and I was still kind of leaning on the, well, it was a limited thing. We knew it was going to be a limited thing, but then we found out that like some stores that were advertised originally didn't get a shipment at all. And they were, there were stores that were on the website. They were announced as going to be able to having those, and then they didn't get a shipment on there. And so my irritation with it started growing. And it's a thing where, Rick and Morty, they pulled obviously from the show for the Szechuan sauce, and they made it like a cultural thing. And so it gave McDonald's free publicity. And then I was still okay with McDonald's then using the popularity of Rick and Morty to be like, hey, see, we're part of these cool kids. I was still fine with that, even though there's licensing issues, because it seemed like a non-contractual synergy there. But between Adult Swim and McDonald's. But then,
especially with the creators saying we had nothing to do with the promotion for the sauce.
Right. Well, him and Harmon come out and they're like, yeah, hey, good job, McDonald's. And then McDonald's completely fucks it up. And they, like, I get that some fans out there, like, they were doing the wrong thing, treating McDonald's employees like shit, and drawing more attention to negative parts of the fan base. That's annoying. But I think more so is that McDonald's, they had a prime opportunity, and this is just coming from a business standpoint. They had a prime opportunity to make everyone happy.
Absolutely.
And when they apologized, they first came out and said, sorry, we could only make so much sauce. And it was such a tone deaf.
I'm sick
apology.
of that excuse, because McDonald's is like the biggest fast food chain in the world, and if they want to make a sauce, they make it. They make a ton of it.
Yeah.
The only reason the McRib is seasonal is because no one would buy it if it was on the menu all the time. They have to make it special so that people are like, oh yeah, they have to have that time to forget how bad it is.
It's like Cadbury.
Go back and get the McRib again.
It's like Cadbury cream eggs and eggnog.
And I want to touch on what you said about them having the opportunity to make everybody happy, right? And I'm gonna hold that thought for a second, because there were a lot of people who are fans of Rick and Morty who were talking crap about Rick and Morty fans that went out and were upset about the sauce. I honestly could live without the sauce. I did, if it wasn't coming to Nebraska, I probably would have been fine with that. But the fact that it was so close, I felt like obligated. I had to go and check this thing out. But like, there are fans of the show who are excited about the sauce, and I don't want to crap on any fandom for being excited about something. So yeah, it's something trivial and it's small, like a cup of, sugary Szechuan soy sauce stuff. But if fans are into that, good for them for going and lining up.
That point exactly, right? Because the new trailer for this Last Jedi came out yesterday, right? And it's so good, and it made so much excitement, and people are going to go to showings dressed up like Darth and like Rey and Darth Maul, and they're going to do all this stuff, right? Because they're excited, and it's part of their fandom. And yes, some people are like, oh, what nerds, dressed up, but I mean, they're excited, and it's part of who they are, and it's part of us as a whole, and again, a communal experience. Like,
absolutely.
You going to McDonald's and meeting so many cool Rick and Morty folks who aren't in the news as toxic or pieces of shit.
Right.
Like that.
and so that's the part for me that was really frustrating to see after a lot of the media coverage came out. Is I did stand in that McDonald's for a couple hours, and oftentimes I was that bearer of bad news for people just because I was standing there in the Interdimensional RSS shirt, and people would come in with a Hungry for Apple shirt on or something, and I'd be like, oh, hey, just so you know, they're out of sauce. Like and they'd be like, oh, really? And then I talked to them for a little bit, and then they're like, all right, well, oh, well, too bad. Thanks for letting me know. So I didn't spend 2 hours waiting here. I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. But, and a lot of people, I couldn't count the number of people that came in looking for the Szechuan sauce, were told that there wasn't going to be any for them, turning and leaving the restaurant, not buying anything. From a business standpoint, McDonald's threw so much money away in doing that. And I understand that maybe there was this intention to create false publicity over the whole thing and be like, hey, we're going to have a very limited run so that you get all those pictures of fans lined up around a McDonald's store. And you're going to get if they had just had plenty of it on hand, you wouldn't have those images available. You would just have a bunch of happy Rick and Morty fans that finally got their chance to taste the sauce.
Yeah.
But instead they made a big, media blitz out of it, and it got coverage all over the place. And unfortunately, it did give an opportunity for some toxic fans to kind of shine a bad light on some of the fandom. But really, I would say from our experience with this podcast, there are a lot of Rick and Morty fans that are genuinely awesome people, and we are very happy to be part of this community. And hopefully we can move past this, and everybody will get to try the sauce in the winter, because McDonald's has said they will have it out nationwide and in a bunch of stores, and everybody will try it, and everyone will form their own opinions. And then hopefully at that point we can put this whole thing to bed, and it will be the official end of season 3. We'll just sit there with our Szechuan sauce, watching the Christmas special, and
together,
and it'll be done. Done.
It's like I think Justin Roiland said this in a tweet. It may have been him, but he says there's lots of I'm paraphrasing here. There's lots of really good Rick and Morty fans out there, and I choose to focus on those ones. And I agree with that sentiment. And we want this to be positive. And so we're going to talk about all the cool people, all the cool guys. Hi. But anyway.
So
whatever.
I don't know if you want to hear all
Whatever.
the dirty details and see some pictures from my trip to McDonald's on Saturday, head over to the blog section on empatheticenthusiasm.com. That's enough of sauce. Can we be done with sauce now? Can we be done with this sauce? Like cancel any other sauce topics from the rest of these podcasts?
I think our slate of sauce based topics it's done. We're good for now.
All right. With that in mind, I think it's time to finally move into the main thing for this week. Brandon, it's the main thing.
Main thing. I messed up the rhythm on
That's fine. It was loose. I was feeling it.
I was trying to do like a Ventura Highway America feel. Actually, it's not a feel. Like I was trying to do Ventura Highway, and
pretty much spot on. Perfect. All right. So obviously, no new episode this week. We've talked for a while that we're going to try and do some sort of season recap with this episode. There are so many things that we could talk about, but I think one of the best ways to move forward is to look at the main characters from the show, the Smith family, and sort of see where they started at the beginning of the season and where they've ended up and what kind of changes they've gone through. Does that work for you, Brandon?
Yeah, that works perfectly for me. While you're talking, I'm pulling up our cheat sheet.
Yes, the sheet of cheating. All right, and so I think we will start with one of the titular characters from the show, Morty Smith, who started the season off sort of over Rick, and he, as Rick had left the family and gone to jail. That first episode, he wasn't really kind of tired of Rick's antics, and he wasn't the one who was eager to see Rick come back.
Right. And in going through the season, you just there's like Vindicators is an example, Pickle Rick, of him just being like, whatever, like I'm done with this. Like this is just all bullshit, and I'm tired of it. When he's yelling at his mom about not calling Rick for the shrinking ray or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like him getting confidence in a weird sense, where like I know I'm better than what Rick has made me out to be before, with just blocking his tracking rays.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely been a season where, if you look back at the first couple of seasons, Morty was sort of kept as that incapable character that was sort of reliant on Rick to get anything done, and when he got into certain situations, he wasn't always the most confident. But Morty has really stepped up this season, and his willingness to take certain challenges on by himself, that you talked about, that shrink ray thing, and like he really completely owned that, and he was the one that figured out the machine and was able to sort of solve everybody's problems on his side of the storyline there. And along with Morty C-137, we also see that this is a big season for Mortys in general. With the Rick Lantis mix-up, we get Evil Morty back, and we see that Morty has taken over the Citadel, and potentially we could have a big change for all Ricks moving forward. So yeah, really, really interesting stuff for Rick. I'm sorry, not for Rick, for Morty.
For Morty, yeah. And those episodes show, the ones that don't focus on purely C-137 Morty, like Rest in Rick Laxation, where it shows the toxic Morty, right?
Yeah.
The toxins are removed from Morty. You catch glimpses of, with Rick Lantis mix-up, of course, you get glimpses of competent Mortys and what competent Mortys are capable of. With no toxins, Morty is absolutely capable of succeeding as a 14-year-old in the business world, right?
Yep, that's right. Buy, sell. I'm not leaving.
the Wolf of Wall Street over there. and of course, a competent Morty can become president and really just get that fascism going on all over the place in the Citadel.
It's really interesting to see where Morty is at the end of the season, where almost the entire episode revolves around Rick trying to impress Morty, or try to do something to kind of cement Morty's like appreciation of Rick, in him trying to get the selfie with the president and things like that. And Morty just really isn't that concerned with it. He's sort of distracted, and he's focused on Minecraft for most of the episode. But he's at the end, he's like, you know what? Rick is kind of out of control right now, and I'm the one that's going to go and take my family, and we're going to go hide out in a cabin. Maybe he didn't make the perfect choice of where to hide out, but he has definitely stepped up this season as being an individual who's capable of getting things done. And I'm interested to see how that will play out in further seasons, if Morty sort of reverts back into some of those old ways, or if we see a new sort of relationship between Rick and Morty on future adventures.
Right. Yeah. I think we saw some of that relationship change in the last episode. I have a specific point, but I'll save it for when we talk about Rick, which is conveniently located after we talk about the other character.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to bookend it.
We're going to bring it back.
Yes, that's right.
Full circle.
So with that in mind, let's talk about a character who was noticeably absent for the majority of the season, and that is the father in the family. That's Jerry. A lot of people, I talk to a lot of people about Rick and Morty these days. Even though people wouldn't want to be around Jerry in real life, a lot of people missed Jerry during this season. What did you think? Were you did you feel like you didn't get enough Jerry, or were you fine with your Jerry levels going through season 3?
I think that I think it was good not having Jerry as much in there. I did miss him, but here's what I think it's good because it allowed us to really kind of focus on how awful Rick actually is as a
Mhm.
character. The previous seasons, you had Jerry around so we can call him a dumbass and be like, let's laugh at the idiot, right?
He was a punching bag even more so than Morty was.
Yeah.
He was the ultimate Morty in a lot of ways.
And once you get rid of that punching bag, then all you can see, you have time to look at the who's doing the punching. And I think that's what we did with Rick this season is we saw him do terrible things for no reason, or for reasons sometimes, and just highlighted to us, the viewer, this isn't somebody we should actually be rooting for. A lot of times, it's not good. It's not good to call yourself a Rick. Like that shouldn't be what you strive for.
Sure. Yeah, I think that it was interesting. The season starts off with Jerry sort of at the height of his life, where he's got a job, even though he doesn't fully understand maybe what he does for the Galactic Federation. He's successful. He keeps coming home with medals. He's bringing those pills home to put on the table, and very quickly he ends up losing that, and not just the job, but also his family. And we get the divorce reveal at the end of that episode, which really, for my money, had completely steered the course of the rest of the season. The focus on the divorce and just, I don't know, when parents get divorced, you definitely see one of them more often than the other. That was my experience. And so the fact that we only saw, Jerry every other weekend, I totally get that happens with divorce. So, and now we're probably going to see Jerry more often, that they've reconciled. But yeah, I don't know. I think Jerry had some significant development as a character. I thought the Whirly Dirly conspiracy and him going and kind of talking with Rick and them just laying out some of their issues on the table and talking about them, and Rick being very open and honest about how he feels Jerry preys on other people by being weak and helpless and forces people to sort of support him because he's whining and incapable. I thought that was really interesting.
You know Taddy Mason? Yeah, and that's how it is in the very end, right? And that's by the end of the season, Jerry has gone from defeated, and he's never really victorious. He stays defeated the entire time,
Yeah.
but he at least, like, I don't know where I'm going with this, other than to say, like, he grew to understand that he is helpless and he is this kind of weak-willed person, but that's who he is.
He might be more self-aware of that fact. If anything, and spending an eternity in a wormhole merged with Rick. I'm sure some aspects of Rick maybe brushed off on him, but ultimately the amount of growth wasn't that huge in this season. He's trying to learn how to sign spin at home by the time Beth comes in, and I don't know, there were some emotional moments with Jerry and times where they really drive home the fact that Jerry does love Beth, and despite the fact that their relationship hasn't always been great, that is the one thing that I think Jerry genuinely cares about people, even if he isn't the smartest guy on the show. Yeah,
and I think that is a huge distinguishing factor between Rick and Jerry. Is the sense that, Jerry's dumb and he's racist, but he's still
all that time I spent teaching you about race, and you became racist.
He knows, in a sense, he knows what love is, right? Like that whole
wants you to show me
the whole scene with him and Beth in his apartment, and he's he's just this shy little kid that's never really grown up. This shy little incompetent kid that's never grown up. But that's what's kind of endearing about him, and at least his emotions are genuine.
Absolutely. I'm curious to see how they'll move forward on the show. I don't know if they'll change Jerry too much, if they will ever get him a steady job or anything like that. But a lot of directions that they can go with Jerry in season 4. Let's shift gears a little bit. Even though fall is upon us, it's time to talk about Summer. Summer Smith.
That's funny.
Sorry,
my man.
The drops. What did you think about Summer this season?
I mean, Summer is. I'm not a child of divorce, so I'm just gonna throw this out there as someone who doesn't know what divorce is like, other than
Must be nice.
threatening my wife with it all the time. Here's the paperwork. Just is that like I felt like
darkest series of our podcast, Brandon.
She was lashing out. That's what my impression of Summer was the entire season, with her like to heck with all of this. I'm gonna. It's an extension of maybe like the turquoise conversation from season 1, where she's like, I don't need anybody to care about me. I'm gonna be an adult soon. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Rick Mancing the Stone being the primary case for that, with her running off with a wasteland warrior.
Yeah, I think it was very clear in that second episode just how much Summer was affected by the divorce. I think in the season premiere, she is also terribly affected by Rick being gone. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's just sort of any breakage in that family structure is something that she's not comfortable with, but she's desperate to have Rick back in that first episode, and then she gets Rick back, but then Jerry's gone. And while she plays it off like she doesn't really care about the divorce or things like that, she's clearly affected by it and clearly making decisions that are not necessarily healthy.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know. There are certain episodes throughout the rest of the season where she is doing things that, I don't know, I think any teenage girl may go through, whether that's breaking up with her boyfriend and trying to deal with those emotions, but then not having a parent at home who is available emotionally, because Beth is going through her own breakup right now. And so she's just sort of wrestling with how to deal with that. And unfortunately, she lives in a house with crazy sci-fi things where she can grow
her boobs,
her boobs, and as well as the rest of her, and then ultimately turn herself inside out.
Yeah, I had this other thought too about Summer, and I feel when we're talking about Summer, there wasn't a whole lot, I guess, necessarily to like talk about her growth necessarily, but I will say that when is it ABC's of Beth, right, where Jerry has the alien girlfriend?
Yep.
Where she's basically the adult in that situation. Her and Morty are the adult in that situation, talking to him in the car, where she gives him the advice, and he's like, well, are you going to help me? And Morty says she did. Depending on who you are, you deal with stress and learning about situations and becoming better people differently. And I think that Summer grows from adversity, and she doesn't let it like crush her. She learns from it, and then she's able to use that to develop herself a little bit more so than Jerry can necessarily.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note about Summer that while there are moments throughout the show where she is vulnerable, she also seems to be one of the sort of toughest characters on the show, and some of the things that she did in that wasteland on Rick Mancing the Stone were really badass things that she did. And there are moments throughout the season where she is clearly the one that doesn't need help from anyone. In Morty's Mindbender, she's the one that sort of comes in and fixes everything and resets the situation. So there are a lot of examples where Summer is the one that sort of has it all figured out, but then again, she's also a teenager that's just sort of finding that independence, and so she's not always right 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But I really would like to see, and it's something we didn't get a lot of in this season, but I would like to see Summer on some more adventures and see her kind of get out there and really explore that aspect of who she is, and see her in some other scenarios like that.
Yeah. A shout out to my friend Co Snyder, who helped me run the Rick and Morty podcast at Amazing Hawaii Comic Con. He posted on Twitter about not seeing Buff Summer. That was a disappointment that we didn't see Buff Summer from the
sequence.
Yeah. I'd like to see Buff Summer. Summer is badass in some of the comics. So absolutely hope to see more of her next year.
Watch for it in the Christmas special
next
year, coming this Christmas. Maybe maybe not.
But speaking of badass women in the world of Rick and Morty, let's move on to Beth. So
she went through it this season, huh?
Yeah. We didn't get a whole lot of character development with Summer, but I feel like we got a mess of it with Beth. What'd you think about Beth's arc this season, Trav?
Even though it was sometimes only provided in like a minute or even 30 seconds in an episode, where we didn't get a whole lot of Beth in certain episodes, it was always consistent in seeing her and how she was dealing with the events of these 10 episodes, right? She is, in that first episode, like really connected with Jerry, and I didn't fully even appreciate it until I went back after watching the rest of the season, how much when the Federation is in charge and like Jerry's pretty successful, she's like, you know what, like my dad's gone, he's left us again, I am fully committed to this family. And then as soon as Rick comes back, she's like, you know what, I'm sick of Jerry's crap. He's out, and they end up getting this divorce, and it's that divorce again drives all of the character development, I think, for everyone, and we see that even though Beth seems perfectly fine with getting the divorce initially, and it seems almost like something that Beth has been asking for the last couple seasons, she really is affected by it and is having trouble, figuring out how to be Beth on her own instead of being with someone that she's kind of been tied to for 17 years. There are times where she gets angry. There are times where she kind of freaks out and builds sculptures out of horse hooves. But then it also frees up moments for her to really explore who she is as an individual. And in the ABCs of Beth episode and even the finale, we kind of get more of that and kind of learn who she has been in her past and potentially who she could be depending on her choices.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between Pickle Rick and Rick Trey and Morty date about how she sees the world, and a lot of that is through the ABCs of Beth when she has a conversation with Dirk about intelligence and how that's just as bad, if not worse. But with her and Pickle Rick, with her and Rick at the very end, their problems have been laid out in front of them. But Susan Sarandon tells them what their problem is, and they take that information in. Whereas Morty and Summer are in the back, like, yeah, this is good. We can use this, and we want to go back to therapy. Rick and Beth are at the front, like, you want to go get a drink? Yeah, let's do that. Let's
completely blow off all of that and get right back into our comfortable roles where we've been for most of our lives.
Because it's work. It's work, Jerry. You see me working here?
You see me working? Yeah. Which is a good throwback, by the way. And I don't know, it's been something that's always existed in the show, Beth's sort of obsession with Rick and her constantly seeking his approval. But really in the ABCs of Beth, we see that she really is more like Rick than I think we've ever given her credit for. And she is really smart, and she is capable of doing a lot more than she's sort of allowed herself to do in the past. And I don't know, it's that we talk about the whole clone thing and whether or not she goes off to explore that and leaves the clone in her place, or whether or not she stayed. I don't know. I think that decision, whatever decision she actually made, it does trigger a new story for Beth, and maybe resolving the issues that she always fought with about the decisions she'd made in her past. And now that she has a concrete decision to move forward, I don't know. We've asked for 3 weeks whether or not she's a clone. I don't think she is. There are people that have written us on Twitter and in emails using the same information that I've looked at for me to make my decision that she's not a clone, and have pointed to that as being the reason why she is. And I think it's just good that the writers have left it open for interpretation.
Agreed. Yeah, you and I have both watched Blade Runner this last weekend, and the question always about replicants was there even in the original Blade Runner, and I think it's an interesting question to leave people with, so they can think a little bit deeper. If you're given the information, then you kind of like, okay, cool, thanks. I'll take this Wikipedia entry and then I'll just forget about it until I need trivia night. But if you leave a question open, that leads you to have to think about it, and the deeper questions by which something answer questions.
Yeah. Okay. Let's wrap up these character studies with the main man himself, Rick Sanchez, who spends
My man.
he starts the season in jail and in a Shoney's, actually. So comfortable, so relaxing, so Shoney's. And breaks out, and then crushes almost all of his enemies, from the Galactic Federation to the Council of Ricks, and even gets Jerry out of the way for what he says are going to be the darkest season of their adventures. And he's pretty much got free reign to do what he wants in the house now. Beth is not going to fight with him because Beth wants that approval from him. And in the end, it doesn't exactly work out the way that he planned. How did you feel about the process that Rick went through in this season?
Well, the process he went through was just he won at the beginning, and I'm looking at all of these episodes, and they're all episodes really where he never really has a conflict, right? Like he's never really challenged by anything. I'm like, maybe Rick Shank Redemption, Pickle Rick. Well, that whole thing, his like, he was never not in control of his pickle thing.
Like, aside from being dependent on rain showing up so that he didn't dry out on the driveway,
yeah,
he pretty much figured out everything else on his own.
Yeah, and he was just kind of like in automatic or automatic drive. What was the one where autopilot?
Autopilot?
Jesus, Brandon. Okay, yeah, like he was like on autopilot, and he didn't. I wouldn't say he really experienced growth. And if anybody else around him was experiencing growth, he might mention it to him, like with Beth, with him mentioning that she, she's smart, and like pointing that out to her, or telling Jerry exactly what's wrong with Jerry. I don't know. I don't see any really growth. I only see stagnation and regression.
I think I might be with you on the fact that there wasn't maybe tremendous growth with Rick, because he wasn't challenged, like you said, and because he's not challenged, he doesn't have reason to grow. But what we did see, I think, which is maybe more telling, is some indicators of what's really making Rick tick in the things that he is motivated by. And while in the past we've really thought of Rick as sort of an uncaring, selfish individual who doesn't necessarily care what anybody thinks, and he's just going to do what's best for Rick, there have been several examples in this season where we see Rick doing things not for personal gain, but sort of to make Morty happy, or maybe to make Beth happy, or to try and try and reinforce, his place in the family, or make himself appear a certain way for everybody else. And so I would say that some of that behavior points to potential insecurities maybe in Rick.
Yeah.
That aren't necessarily visible when you see a super confident mad scientist, but he really is focused on, and I guess maybe if you bring up the Toxic Rick episode, all those things that he wanted to separate from himself, the things that he finds negative, some of those things were actually values or qualities that most people would want to see in a person. So, caring for Morty and those sorts of things, they really highlighted the fact that Rick is battling with that throughout the season.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with the insecurities part. Where I'll separate it is by saying that, though I agree with insecurities, I think that any perceived positive selfless act on his part, it all stems from insecurity and his needing to feel good about himself, right? So yeah. Vindicators 3, you could make the case like, oh yeah, he wants Morty to keep looking up to him, but also he just wants Noob to be happy. God damn, right. Or in the Rick Trey and Morty date, and I was talking. We talked about it on Twitter briefly today, but why was Rick so for trying to get the selfie for Morty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
Well, I think I'm about to say what you were building towards, which is between that episode and even in the Vindicators, there have been a couple times where Morty or Rick didn't necessarily feel like he was the person that Morty was looking up to, and he goes to great lengths to prove that he can get the things that Morty wants, and that he's the one that Morty should look up to, and he doesn't want these other people like presidents or sci-fi characters to kind of be the heroes in Morty's life. He wants himself to be that for Morty. I don't know. Is that what you're saying?
That's not where I was going. No, but okay. I do agree with that point wholeheartedly. That's a good point, and thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, I would have said that later, but
okay,
you beat me to it, and so now all my talking points are gone. No, what I was gonna say is, the whole fight with the president is, to me, less about getting Morty his selfie and more about Rick asserting his dominance and saying, you are not better than me. And yeah, okay, we're going to get Morty his selfie, but you, Mr. President, are not better than me. Vindicators, you're not better than me. Jerry, you're not better than me. Nobody is better than me. I'm a god. I'm Doctor Who in this bitch, right?
Yeah.
And to me,
again,
that's
pointing to that insecurity, right? Like he wants to be the best.
Yes, exactly. I will say this is the point I wanted to make about Rick, and we could talk more about Rick here. But before I forget, I do think it's interesting, and when I talk about stagnation and kind of him winning in regression, I don't know anywhere else in the series where Rick is sitting down and he's taking interest in whatever Morty's doing, like legitimate interest in what Morty's doing. So the Minecraft stuff, where it would be like Rick, like, let's go on an adventure. Here's interdimensional television and doing all this other stuff. Instead, Rick's like, oh, you're doing Minecraft? Yeah, I want to do Minecraft too. Yeah. It's like him,
love it. Like
him wanting to do something that Morty is doing.
Yeah. That is definitely a change, and I don't know if that's indicative of things to come or some sort of shift in their relationship, or because there are several occasions throughout the history of the show where they have just enjoyed kind of just hanging out together.
Yeah.
Specifically the interdimensional cable episodes, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe this is Rick starting to see some of the value in what Morty brings to the table, and finding some common interests that start with Morty and don't necessarily start with Rick.
Or because he wasn't challenged, he was able to sit there and not do anything productive with his time. play
Certainly-
Minecraft.
Certainly, spending time playing Minecraft is not necessarily productive. I've done a lot of it.
Yes, yeah.
All right, I want to shift gears a little bit because we have a whole lot of other stuff to get to, and we're hitting
Yeah.
about the 1 hour mark in this episode.
Yeah.
So we did set aside a whole bunch of questions, and I think we can probably rapid fire through several of these. The first thing that you have is what changed from the start of season 3 and going into season 4. I mean, we talked about all the characters themselves. Obviously, at the start of season 3, the Federation was in charge on Earth, and the Citadel had the council in place. All of that is obviously gone. The Galactic Federation is pulled out. Also, the whole divorce arc has pretty much come and gone over the course of the season. Anything else that sort of stands out to you going into season 4?
Yeah, I mean, the family dynamics are kind of went back to pre-season 3 levels, but I think things outside of the nuclear family scope have changed, right? The whole thing with the Citadel is huge, and Phoenix Person being somewhere out there with Tammy is still huge.
Yeah, we
right?
certainly haven't forgot about them.
and so I think, as far as what's changed from season 3 going to season 4, like they're back to being able to do these kind of like innocent one-off kind of adventure stories throughout the season 4, but they can also do like what Supernatural does, where they have like their one-off episodes, but they have some lore sprinkled into it. Right?
Yeah, I definitely think the fact that Amorti is in charge at the Citadel has definitely, as Ryan Ridley talked about in the interview that we did with him, he's stepped into that empty space that Rick created at the beginning of season 3, and has the potential, especially with C-137 Rick not knowing that is happening. He's decided to separate himself from the Citadel and not pay attention to what's going on there. Whatever that Morty is planning, he's doing it free from sort of the watching eye of our Rick. So wherever he goes or whatever he does decide to do, there's potential that it's going to catch Rick off guard.
Right. Agreed. We talked about clone. I don't know if we need to explore it anymore, but I'll just say I wrote down Clone Saga on there. But
yeah,
I
don't know. I
didn't realize it was going to be such a continuing talking point necessarily. It's like the tail end. It's like the opposite of the Szechuan sauce stuff from the beginning of the season, where like now the clone thing, this big overarching question about whether or not people are clones, is now like the talking point to continue on till season 4 addresses it one way or the other. I didn't know it was going to be that big. How about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the fans do grab certain things and gravitate towards them and sort of build theories consistently around different aspects of the show. There was that big conversation on Twitter today where people were talking about maybe Rick was actually a clone the whole season. Maybe Beth, maybe clones are all throughout the show. My personal thought on that is that devalues the every episode if you find out, oh no, none of that was actually the characters that we thought they were. They were just clones or things like that. And that's definitely not something I think the writers are trying to do when they write these episodes. They want the things that these characters are going through to actually mean something to those characters. So in terms of Beth being a clone and moving forward, I think the writers could definitely never touch it again and always let it kind of hang there, and maybe it would drive a few people crazy. But realistically, when you're talking about a show where your main characters have swapped dimensions at least twice and have sort of joined other families when it was convenient, I don't want to consider any character, I don't want to label them as interchangeable. But if you have a Beth that is a clone, but all of her memories are fundamentally the same, and physically she is pretty much the same, then yeah, like she's pretty much still Beth. And whatever decision was the result of her being that version of Beth is up for argument, but it doesn't really change who Beth is in the show. And so I think you can still have the same sort of Beth. And then maybe in 2 seasons you have the original Beth show back up and be like, yeah, that was a clone, sucker. I've been flying around the galaxies, and you could do, and you kind of hold that in your pocket. But genuinely, I like the idea that she's not a clone and that she just is making this change because she's finally made the choice for herself to stay.
Yeah, and I think all of us have at one point in time said to ourselves, I wish I was a different person, or I wish I looked differently, or I wish I acted differently, or spoke differently, or, was more attractive, or had a bigger penis, stuff like that.
Had hair, those sorts of things.
We've all had that kind of existential crisis about ourselves, like, who am I?
Yeah,
what
hypothetically.
What am I on this world for? And I think that's what you can take from the whole Beth clone saga arc is, like, sometimes we just need to figure out what our priorities are and who we are. And so that's my thought on that. That's my thought.
I dig it.
Thanks.
Brandon, we didn't rank the entire season because frankly that would just be too much work.
Yeah.
But we did take
we
the
can't
majority.
we can't do 10 episodes, but by God, we can do 6.
We can do 6. So what we decided to do is we decided to list our top 3 episodes and our bottom 3 episodes. I don't want to justify every choice that we made, but we can maybe talk about some of the differences that we had.
Sure.
We both listed the Rick Lantis mix-up as our number 1 episode of the season.
Numero uno.
I think that's pretty common across the board. If you look at ratings on different websites and things like that, everybody loved that episode. It's gotten, I think it's got the highest rating of any episode in the series so far.
It's, I'll say it again. I think it's the best episode of the series.
Yeah. It is rock solid, and the fact that they were able to bring Evil Morty back in such a triumphant way was just really well done from a writing standpoint and from an animation standpoint. The episode is just rock solid all the way around. Do you want to list our number 2 episode?
Yeah, absolutely. Our number 2, we share the number 2, the Rick Shank Redemption.
Yeah, the season premiere that caught us by surprise, but it was an epic episode. And I part of me wondered if it was just the fact that it came on as a surprise, and I watched it over and over again on the live stream and getting ready for doing a podcast about it. If that was the reason that I liked it so much, but revisiting it, especially after seeing all the other episodes, it holds up, man. It does.
I know it does. I mean, there's I was talking to someone yesterday about just the repeat watchings of Rick and Morty and why and how that is part of what makes the show so good. And the Rick Shank Redemption is absolutely one of those episodes that you can watch over and over and over again and just be like, yeah, still
good.
Still as good on the 100th viewing as it is on the 700th.
Yeah. Let's talk about our difference in opinion with number 3. What was your number 3 episode this season?
So I chose Pickle Rick as my number 3, and yours was
Morty's Mind Blowers. Which
why? Like where? Let me ask, where was Pickle Rick in relation to that?
It'd probably be 4. Yeah. And realistically, I like Pickle Rick. It is a great episode. And I think, I'm going to get a ton of weird responses on social media now. How could you possibly put Morty's Mind Blowers up that high? I like the sort of anthology type, or not anthology, but like just the random clips sort of episodes in the series. And even though it wasn't an interdimensional cable episode, just some of the things that were revealed between the characters, like we talked earlier about Rick's insecurities, but they're really highlighted in that episode when he's willing to erase a memory from Morty's mind just because he beat him in checkers or something like that. Like it's really hard to process all of the things that we learned about the characters in that episode because everything is happening so quickly. But I thought it was a very interesting episode. I loved the way Summer sort of concluded the whole thing, and I don't know. For me, I've watched that episode a couple of extra times and really just go back to it and enjoy it. I like Pickle Rick for the action sequences and things like that. I felt like some of the therapy stuff just still didn't sit perfectly with me. But I don't know, why did you feel like it was such a great episode?
Where it didn't sit well with you, it sat well with me because I like the therapy aspect of it. Because my wife, who just she opened the door and she's like, "Oh my God, you're recording right now." Her and I, we've gone through the counseling, and what Susan Sarandon says in that session about, it, like, some people, they just want adventure and it's work. Like, it's boring. It's boring to you.
Yeah.
And it just it's so true. And the reason her and I are together still isn't because we're both extremely lazy and we don't want to look up a lawyer in the yellow pages, which is why it was originally why we're still together, but not now. Now we use the internet.
No. Now you put in the work. Brandon.
Google is readily available. No,
Yeah.
it's not that. Like, we put the work in and we worked on this relationship, and that's why we still have it. And Rick is someone that it's a great episode to show that's not him, and he's selfish and he won't put in the work for anybody else unless he wants to do it.
I'm gonna be real honest with you, Brandon.
Yeah.
And maybe it's the hipster in me. Maybe it's the guy that doesn't want to like everything that everybody else is liking. But the way the Pickle Rick sort of memes kind of blew out of control, and everybody was making, "Hey, I'm Tickle Rick," or I'm, different, putting Rick's face on everything else. But that aspect of the episode was not the most powerful thing. And you talk about those the resolutions that came out of that therapy, and I do really appreciate those scenes, and I like a lot of what is said in there. So I mean, I do think it was a great episode, but maybe just the fact that that part of it wasn't what the major takeaway was for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I
I think that's why that episode is so good to me, and that's why it's in my top 3, is because before the episode came out, people were like, "Oh, I'm Tickle Me Elbow Rick," and all these other types of Ricks, and people were expecting one thing, and then he's in the sewers and he's being all badass with Jaguar and all that stuff. But the therapy stuff undercuts all of that. It's supposed to, and say,
Sure.
You guys focused on that. That's great. You focused on how badass Rick is, but you have to know that he is extraordinarily damaged inside, and you shouldn't be looking up to that. And so that's why I appreciate it as a whole. Is that it did undercut that action of it.
Absolutely. Do you want to quickly get into our bottom 3?
Yes.
Just list them off. What were your bottom 3?
The Rectorian Morty date is number 1 of my least favorite. Vindicators 3 is there, and the ABCs of Beth.
I am pretty close to you on there. These are, I couldn't decide which one of these was my absolute 10 out of 10. But these are definitely my bottom 3. The Rectorian Morty date is in there. Vindicators 3, and then also Rick Mancing the Stone, which, not to again, I'm gonna sound like I'm hedging myself here, but I did rewatch that episode in preparation for this one, and just some of what goes on in that episode, it wasn't my favorite adventure for them to go on, and I know that a lot of it was highlighting the fact that they were all struggling with the immediate fallout of the divorce, but I think, and that's real. Those are real things that happen. But it just, for me, looking back on it, it just wasn't my absolute favorite of the season.
Side note, I think it's interesting that you said the fallout of the divorce, and they were in a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
That's right. Glad you picked up on that.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. So I just want to talk about. I'll throw ABC's of Beth because that's the one that's different between us. And I just, although it was, I think maybe it has to do a little bit with the clone stuff, and
Okay.
that highlighted all the clone conversation.
Mhm.
But I think also the fact that Beth was a sociopath when she was younger, I think that was, it didn't sit well with me. Like
Okay.
it didn't feel like a natural twist. Like I didn't
Yeah.
really see that coming throughout the entire series up to that point. It was just
She,
like,
she hasn't necessarily exhibited those characteristics prior to that episode, so it does feel a little bit like a forced history on her that we haven't seen evidence of necessarily in other episodes.
exactly right. It didn't feel earned up to that point in time. I think is my issue with that. Now, Vindicators 3, you and I both agreed on that one. Directed by our friend Brian Newton.
Yep.
Who there's a top
written by friend of the podcast, Ryan Ridley, sort of.
No, Vindicators was written by Sarah Carbiner and
was it?
Yeah.
Oh no, he was just
Erica
tired.
Rosby.
He said he was just tired of defending that episode because he thinks it's great. And honestly, it is in my bottom 3. But there are things I really liked in that episode, and not just Aloha Rick. But there just were some moments in there that I don't know. I had to pick 3. I had to, and it just wasn't. And maybe it was just part of the way that the story came together, or like the way the elements were presented. Obviously, we got Noob in that episode. I thought sort of Rick's contraptions that he threw, where it was able to throw together while blackout drunk. All of that is really good, classic Rick type stuff. But
yeah, like I'd heard that it was like a classic Rick and Morty adventure, and I don't completely agree with that sentiment just personally, but I laughed a lot during that episode. And here's the thing, like I laughed a lot during that episode, but I don't think it was one of the best of the season.
Sure.
And I had to pick 3.
Really, it's like picking your least 3 favorite children, right? Like, there's definitely 3 of them, but like it's still hard to put names to the faces, right?
Yeah, but when you're sitting there with your significant other and you look over at your 10 kids, you're like, we agree on 2
in the corner over there, like you know.
And the second one of those kids, of course, is the Rick, Tree, and Morty date for us. And I'm surprised. I guess I'm a little surprised that you picked that. Why did you pick this episode in your bottom 3?
Honestly, like I think maybe I was still coming off unfair expectations for a season finale. I don't know, the sort of the drive behind the episode and the interaction with the president. It just didn't feel supernatural to me. Like not supernatural, but just like super natural. Yeah, and I don't know, like it felt a little bit like it ended abruptly. Mm-hmm. And obviously we know, from the meta aspect outside the show, that it wasn't supposed to be a finale. I feel like if that was an episode that was just sort of part of the season, I might appreciate it a little bit more. And I don't know, I just felt like the resolution at the end was sort of forced in there to kind of just like get the family back together and show that Rick is now not at the top of the family, patriarchy. He's sort of the afterthought in the family as they all sit around and enjoy sugar chicken.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. It wasn't supposed to be a finale. And I'm doing a sin in just comparing it to an older episode and having that affect my rating of it. But really, the Rick Landis mix-up could have been and might well should have been the finale. And I think a lot of people agree with that. I don't think you do, but it could have been a way to still get the same effect of putting Rick in his place and still somehow incorporate the Jerry stuff.
Yeah, and to defend my feelings of not having the Rick Landis mix-up as the finale, because everybody that I've talked to about it seems to think that that should have been the finale, is that that episode really didn't deal with Rick and Morty. And when I say Rick and Morty, I mean C-137. I mean the main characters that we follow episode to episode. They were an afterthought in that episode. You could have cut the opening and closing scenes out, and it wouldn't have had them in it at all. And all the things that we love about that episode are still there. So I think from a showrunner standpoint, like I don't know how comfortable I would be ending my season with characters that aren't core, like they aren't the main characters of the show. Yeah. So and maybe that's why the decision was made or not, or maybe they just didn't realize that the episode would end up as great as it was when they started planning everything out. And but really that was sort of the top episode of the year.
Gotcha. Oh yeah, okay. Well, I agree with your sentiments, and I can see that perspective, and I appreciate your perspective, Travis. Yeah. That's why I co-host this with you.
I appreciate you appreciating me. The next bullet point you have is favorite episode of the season. Can we talk do we want to say anything more about Tales from the Citadel or the Rick Lantis mix-up? Like, it's out there.
It's out there.
If you want to hear our comments, go check out the episode where we cover the show in detail. I am curious. You put what is our favorite podcast episode of the season?
Yeah.
What did you enjoy doing the most as a podcaster in season 3?
Oh yeah. I mean, it wasn't directly part of the season, but it was like it was in that little hay break, the middle of the road break between episodes that we interviewed Ryan Ridley. Like that was just as when you do a Rick and Morty podcast and you get, we had Brian on the show, which is amazing. And then you get one of the head writers of the show on there, producer as well. Like that's just so freaking cool. And it's in the middle of the season. And he says things like granite, which is a slip up on his part and not a secret joke for Morty's Mind Blowers. But it's just so cool being able to talk to him. And when you are a fan of something, being able to speak to your idol or get some Szechuan sauce, I think that's so cool. And it was an honor to have done that.
Yeah, I'm still sort of, when I think back to it, I'm kind of in shock that Ryan Ridley even came on the podcast and hung out and spent so much time, really just going through all aspects of the show and sort of his part in making that happen. So
yeah. What about you? What about you, Travo?
I think having the guests on the show has been a highlight for me. And Brian, even though I missed Brian Newton coming on to the podcast the first time, having him on after Morty's Mind Blowers really was a highlight for me this season. Not just getting to talk to him and having him on the show and getting his insight, but like he was really open about all of the things that we didn't see in that episode and sort of showing us how the process changed throughout the development of the episode and certain jokes that they tried and that didn't make the final cut, or the way things were changed. Some of my favorite bits from that episode had been drawn in a different way. The Sophie's Choice element, right? I highlighted that, and how that was written out a lot longer with her going back and forth. But then in the final cut, they just she immediately makes the decision, right. and the joke pays off so well. And so just kind of getting that inside baseball sort of perspective and having him on to kind of walk us through that, that was just super awesome. And I appreciate him coming on the show as well.
Yeah. The other question that I have was, obviously we just got through season 3. We're considering this the end of. Whoa! Hey, microphone hitter.
I just punched my pop filter.
This is the first season of the podcast, right? And I don't know when we're going to take the hiatus for the show, but I have to move to Florida, so I have to take some kind of break probably. But we did many episodes before the season started, so I wanted to ask Travis, what was your favorite non-season 3 episode of season 1 of Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast?
You know, it was a super hard decision for me, in part because this season has been such a whirlwind, and it's almost hard to remember the podcast before we were doing weekly episode recaps. But I decided to choose the Interdimensional TV Face-Off, mostly because those 2 episodes are 2 of my favorites from the history of the show, and just the fact that we kind of got a chance to look at those episodes a little bit more in depth and talk about the things that we loved about those episodes and why sort of those clips brought you into being a fan of the show, and then in turn me finding out about the show. And so I don't know, I really like the fact that we got to go back and look at all that stuff.
Okay, I got you. That, and yours is far more sentimental than mine.
and the other reason I picked that is because you picked the one I was going to pick.
Yeah, I'm sure.
No, I went and looked at it, and then I was going to type it in, and I saw you had already written it in your block on the Excel sheet.
No way,
so
really?
Yeah, and so I picked a different episode.
Oh man, that's odd and creepy. Just in time for Halloween. Yeah, mine was episode 15, which is Rick Tendo Mortytainment System, where we talked about Rick and Morty video games, and I really like that episode because, you know, we're talking about Rick and Morty, and we talk, obviously the show is about Rick and Morty, and what it did was it allowed us to be creative, like be like basically like doing like fanfic for Rick and Morty, like for us to like get our creative chops out there and say like, oh, let's brainstorm, like if we were video game designers for a day, like what kind of things will we do with the show or for the show, and you know, it allowed us to be in Squanch Tendo maybe for a minute. You know,
yeah, which, you know, offer still stands anytime you want to bring us on. You know, maybe just to I don't know, testers, anything. I'm willing to help out on any future Rick and Morty video games.
Squanch Tendo, I have my project manager professional certification. Look, you know, it's a 6-figure cert. if you ever want me to manage some projects,
yeah, call him up. He's got nothing else going on right now. All right, so I wanted to do a quick plug for some of the music this season. Really great songs across the board. The ABCs of Beth had that great sort of folky song as they were building a clone of Tommy, and then they actually had a song that hit like the
charts,
the charts with the terry flaps, those Toldy folds. So again, really great music this season. Overall, while it was possibly the darkest season of their adventures, I really think that this season does hold up. They did step it up to a new level, and I personally do not feel, as some do, that this was a weaker season for the show. I do think the show is expanding and it's growing, and I am excited to see where they go in season 4.
That's right. I just want to talk about this. Oh yeah, this song makes me so happy, and I played on my Echo Dot in the kitchen, and Chelsea just kind of like laughs at me. And also my friend Ozzy over at work, he hates that song. He hates it in a good way, but every once
in the best way possible.
I take my phone over to his cubicle and just start playing it every once in a while. He's like,
Brandon, real quick before we finally close up this segment, is there anything maybe we missed from season 3, or are there episodes that you're really hoping to see in season 4, looking ahead many years from now when season 4 is upon us?
They can finally finish up that Minecraft episode.
Make it happen.
But along those lines, I think that they, you know, the comics, they have the Pocket Like You Stole It Pocket Mortys in the comics right now, and I think they could do an episode at least based off of that. That would be
some sort of like a Tron like maybe they go into a video game type situation.
Yeah,
something like that.
that's a good call. Or even like pulling some stuff out of the intro with the Morty inside the department store, or or Buff Summer.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing them do some sort of like total riff on like Pixar type animation or something. And even if it was just like a few scenes or something where they really kind of jack with the art style in some cool way, and do and like they did with the not to put any pressure on Brian or anyone else working on the animation team, but I think it would be cool if they do some sort of thing that even for a small segment they could explore some other styles in animation, and in some way incorporate it into the flow of the show. I think that might be cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, cool. Well, you have any other thoughts, Travo?
It's been an awesome season, from my heart and maybe a piece of Brandon's. We genuinely thank everybody that's sort of taken this ride through the season with us. It feels like this is our final episode or something. It definitely is not. And we have 2 more seasons of Rick and Morty just sitting on the shelves, literally sitting on the DVD shelves, waiting for us to review those episodes. So, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to everything that we're going to do next on this podcast.
Wholeheartedly agree. And along with that is still interacting with Unity and getting your thoughts on things while we wait. I mean, we have ideas for the show. We want to try to highlight some fan content. We know there's a lot of you out there that like drawing, do some stop motion animation. Stop motion, is that?
Yep, stop motion.
Yeah,
you crushed it. You got your terminology right.
my brain blanked. And Rick and Morty music, and we want to talk to more folks, so we want to also incorporate that. But that,
well, let's step from this side, and then we'll just officially say it's time for listener suggestions and short outs.
That was my segment. That's what I was trying to do.
And then we can go a little bit further with that. Normally we'd start off with our patrons over on Patreon. We thank you guys again so much for your support of the show. And for those of you that are hanging out in Discord on a regular basis, it's fun just kind of having that ongoing dialogue with you. Sometimes I'm not in there as much as I wish I could be, but it's great to kind of jump back in and see the discussions that are happening and chime in from time to time.
Yeah.
And maybe play a game with a couple of you. I think some of you have already talked about hitting me up to play some PUBG or something. So hopefully we can do some of that.
It's really cool, and you get to see how really unimpressive we are. So.
Yeah, you get the real Travis and Brandon for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to some tweets. Daticus he's the guy that did that awesome 8-foot long fan art, and he's currently working on a GoFundMe to get that professionally colored so that he can maybe release that or sell that. And I hit my pop filter again. But yeah, you're talking about fan art and talking about creations and things like that. He's actually drawing us right now.
Yeah.
And he sent us a sample of me as a Rick and Morty character, and it is friggin' amazing. I cannot wait for him to share his interpretation of Brandon, and then hopefully get those out for the rest of the world to see. No pressure, Daticus, but we are very excited to see the final result on those. And if you do Rick and Morty fan art, or someone who is doing something really awesome and inspired from Rick and Morty, send us an email, rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com, or hit us up, and maybe we can feature that work on a future episode.
Yes, absolutely. We got a tweet from our friend Goran. He asked, "What does the RSS stand for?" And this is a really good question, because I don't think we've ever actually established this on the show ever.
I'll admit I responded first with an extremely technical answer, and I think I was between meetings or super busy at work, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to ignore this tweet, but I want to give him the real deal, what's going on. Which is RSS is like a distribution system on the internet. If you have any sort of regularly updating web content, you can use RSS to allow people to subscribe it. It is the backbone of podcasting. Unless you're on SoundCloud, most people have developed an RSS feed to get their podcast out into the world.
That's right.
When we came up with for the name of the show, we're like, hey, interdimensional cable is awesome, but what is like the version of cable for podcasting? RSS feeds.
RSS.
Let's do interdimensional RSS.
It just fit. It just worked.
It made perfect sense to the two of us who are very familiar with podcasts and how they work. Never really thought about the fact that other people don't know what that means.
Yeah, it did not occur to me until honestly, even this question, we're like, oh yeah, maybe people don't know what RSS is. You know, people sometimes barely know what a podcast is. So anyways, our bad. Interdimensional RSS.
Sorry.
The unofficial Rick and Morty podcast. At Ape Richmond, this is I like this tweet, and Richmond says snowflakes contain infinite why am I saying trying to say Giovanni Ribisi variations, geometric variations, but are always made from water in its frozen phase, infinite but bounded. And I think this is a tweet referencing the infinite variations of Rick and Morty. I talked about it on last episode with Rick saying like you're all doing the same exact thing at this exact moment. Like you're not special. You're all doing this. Even you farting, Summer. And the whole thing is like snowflakes there's so many variations in there, but it's all tied together. So even though it's limited, it's infinite in its configuration. And so I like that tweet.
Yeah.
That's all, Travis.
Solid inspiration there. Email, we did you have 0 emails in the show notes, but we actually got an email today. So I'm going to rapidly try and pull that up. This is from Lydia, and she says that she has been enjoying the podcast. Was wondering what we thought about the last episode. I think we pretty much covered that in detail both here and in the previous podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't totally love that was a finale, and she did think that the Rick Lantis mix-up would have been a better finale. So yeah, like I said, a lot of people going that way.
This guy agrees.
Do you? She asked if we think the Beth cloning stuff will be resolved in the next season. I don't know. Flip a coin. I think they leave it hanging for a while. Like personally, that's my opinion. I don't think they touch it for any time in the near future.
I'm gonna flip the same coin, and I'll probably get a different result. And and there's your answer. Yeah, it could go either way. And do I want to see it resolved? Personally, I don't. I mean, unless it's, I don't, because if they say it's not one way or the other, then it's like, I don't know. It's kind of capitulating a little bit. We're like, I don't know. It could happen or it could not. Whatever. Whatever, Travis.
No. I don't know. Finally, she asked if we think we'll get any more history on Rick's backstory or like young Beth episodes, things like that. I definitely think that as the series goes on into 100 years of Rick and Morty, I'm sure they'll explore Rick's backstory some more. They're really only giving us glimpses and tastes of it for now. But I don't think there's going to be like some huge epic story that's just all about teen Rick and sort of like, that sort of stuff. I think it's always going to come in bits and pieces as we learn more and more,
right.
Little bit.
I want to change things up, and I want to do a throwback to last week's episode. Travis, I want to ask you a question. What's your favorite line from Rick and Morty? I want you to give a little more feeling.
Let's get the F out of H. No, I do feel bad for half-assing this response as we did. But I think I did have a good answer last time, and now I can't think of it.
Yeah, I was. If you had asked me this question, I was going to joke with your response,
Oh,
and then
okay.
I was going to let you joke with my response. But so go ahead and ask me the question. Ask me the question.
So Brandon, what is your favorite quote from the series?
Well, I can tell you definitively, my favorite quote is the Brazilians line. That's the one that's my favorite of all time.
Yeah, I like the one where they say, nobody exists on purpose, and let's go watch TV.
And there you go. There you have our legitimate answers to your question. Sorry, it took us a week to get them out there, but
Again, this is. I just want to be clear here that last week you sprung that question in the show notes without talking to me about it, and I wasn't prepared. And then it's literally not even in the show notes this week.
Nope.
So you're again setting me up for failure, Brandon.
That's right. No, I mean, we already answered the question. Yours is nobody exists on purpose.
Yeah.
Next, we're gonna go with reviews next. This one is a long one, so please bear with us. And I like this. I like this one, so I'm gonna read it. it all out. Have you read this one, Travis? Yet?
I'm
don't read
it right now. Okay.
Oh, don't read it. Stop reading it. I'm just listening to me. It's by Maya Self. The review goes as such. Now operating under the full title Interdimensional RSS, when is season 4 coming out? This podcast holds the distinction of being the only RAM fan content that's vocal tics and awkward stutters aren't a labored attempt to mimic the show's two main characters. Laugh along with the hosts as they read this review in a dual bid to acknowledge their fans and fill time as they wait for more semi-pertinent news. Look, I was trying to go meta with this one. I mean, you said to write a review, but my interest in helping you guys out for your genuinely entertaining content and my genuine distaste for metrics and social media shilling are at war here. I have to find some way to amuse myself while putting 5 gold stars on your work like you just wrote a 5-paragraph essay on the Louisiana Purchase.
That is a fantastic review. Kudos. Very well done. And we appreciate the
that's not even loud enough.
That one wasn't loud enough, Brandon. That was awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much for that thoughtful review on the show.
Yeah. Next up by Summerist Summer. Thanks, guys, for your funny conversations, your love of Rick and Morty, and great positive take on season 3. I thought it was awesome, and I love that you guys did too. Please keep the podcast going in the off season. I'd listen to every one. Love the special guests too.
Yeah. So if any special guests want to come on the show, hit us up. Our calendar's pretty open right now. We did get a miscellaneous 2-star review, so thank you to whoever provided that constructive criticism without highlighting any specific problems.
Thank you. Maybe they didn't like our genuine vocal tics.
Genuine vocal tics. Yeah.
And we did get a review over on Stitcher by that Vault Hunter, which I think is a Borderlands reference, maybe. Great game. I hope a Borderlands 3 comes out. I'm a fan of podcasts and a huge fan of Rick and Morty. I was looking for a Rick and Morty podcast, and lo and behold, this was the first I came across. I started episode 0 a couple days ago, and have already listened to a good chunk of the episodes. Kind of bummed I didn't catch it as it was coming out, but I am working my way to the current episode. You guys do a good job with this podcast. It's pretty cool hearing the podcast evolve, and I can't wait to get to the later episodes and get caught up. Keep up the good work. Side note, apparently the 2 podcasts I listen to have no option to rate or review, so I found my way to Stitcher, thanks to you, so that I can rate and review for you guys. Again, keep up the good work, and I look forward to catching up on the podcast and hearing new episodes.
Yay! Thank you, Vault Hunter, for your review. And terribly sorry.
I don't like soundboards. It's so cheesy, dude.
You'll get the feel of it. I just love that I was pushing it for so long, and you're the one that's actually making it happen. So way to go, Brandon. I'm sorry if your podcatcher that you use does not have a rating or review system, but there's a simple way to get around that. Head over to Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, and leave a review there. You don't have to download your shows from there. Just go leave a review, and it will definitely help other folks to find the show and keep us relevant over on Apple Podcasts. I don't know, between all the comments and the fan coordination, the community that we have built, even though this has been a week where the toxicity of the Rick and Morty fandom has been highlighted, it is a genuine pleasure for both Brandon and myself to get to do this podcast and communicate with the fans and just kind of hang out with Unity in on all of your different shapes and forms. So yeah, I'm excited to keep going. I don't think we have an episode next week for Interdimensional RSS.
I don't think we do. Sorry, everyone.
I apologize for that. Right now, if you find yourself next weekend struggling to get by without the sultry sounds of our voices, then you can listen to us ramble along over on Apathetic Enthusiasm, and then in 2 weeks we'll try to have something up and ready for you guys to sort of fill that gap in the Rick and Morty off season with some additional content. So until then. Thank you so much for listening. What is now almost a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, 2-hour podcast.
and until next week, I'm Travis.
And I am Brandon.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
There I go punching it again.